It's day 4 of the Dale Warner murder trial in Lenawee County, Michigan. I'm Melissa Andrews, a crime and investigative reporter. Dale Warner is accused of murdering his wife, Dee Warner, in 2021 and then welding her inside a fertilizer tank where she was found 3 years later. Today starts off our 11th witness, the first of today, Georgia Ziegler, cell phone records specialist for Michigan State Police. Okay, so Georgia says that she was provided Verizon records for Dee Warner and she analyzed them. The records are not exact locations of the device, just the cell phone towers and what side of the tower is being accessed. Towers cover more geographic space in a rural area than an urban area. So she was asked to look for the period of time between March 28th, 2021 and April 28th, 2021. Remember, Dee went missing on April 25th. Analysis focused on the time of her disappearance. So she says the last session initiated on Dee's phone was April 25th at 7:01 a.m. to 7:05 a.m. That's the last time the phone was active. And this was one of the exhibits that was shown during this period. The bottom purple is what you'd be looking at here. So they talked a lot about these arcs, and these are the two towers, and where they intersect at the time and where they meet is an indication of where the device was. And we're referencing this little blue mark right here. The last interaction with the tower was at 7:14 a.m. And then Dee's last outgoing call was Saturday at 4:47 p.m. All of the other calls were incoming and went to voicemail. She never made a call after Saturday the 24th. So these arcs come up again on cross-examination. Ms. Ziegler is asked if her work is peer-reviewed. She says yes. They said, you can't tell us where the device was last connected in terms of a location. She says, I can't give the exact location of where the device is, but when multiple towers give distance readings, it's a pretty good indication of where the device is. And here is another image that was used. The defense says, how precise is it? She says, the arcs are pretty accurate, within 1/10 of a mile. She's asked if the device is interacting with both towers. She said yes. And what affects cell signal strength, obstructions, distance from the tower, or lots of people on a tower. So looking back at this slide, the last usage stop time is 7:05 a.m. But she's asked, you don't know what's going on with the device to register that, correct? And she said, correct. So they were talking back and forth about if the arcs indicate the phone is likely there. And this is the image that came up. She said it's likely, but not definitely or specifically in the spot where all these towers are indicating the device most likely is. The jury has 3 questions for her. In what ways would a cell phone lose all contact with a cell phone tower? She said it could be because it's out of range with a specific tower, it's in airplane mode if it was destroyed, or powered off or out of range. If the end time for one session is 7:05, why do the arcs say 7:13? I believe they might be referencing this image, and you can see the 7:05, and then it goes up to actually 7:14. She says those are 2 separate data sets. The network is sending time signals to the device after 7:05. Next question, can you tell if a phone is on at a certain time? And she says there's no records indicating the phone was on anymore. On redirect, she's asked, when's the last time you are certain the phone was connected to the network? She said 7:14. Then back to cross, she says your analysis was just for those 2 towers, correct? The last data session ended at 7:05, but the device connected with the tower until 7:13. Yes. So what I thought was interesting here is that she is testifying that the phone was last used at 7, and Dale had previously testified the last time he saw Dee was on the couch sleeping at 6 a.m. Next, we have Devin Newell. He is an expert that works for General Motors and OnStar with the My Cadillac app. He's talking about how you can see the diagnostics of your car, the location, you can unlock it. He was sent a search warrant to search for OnStar records regarding Dee's 2016 Cadillac Escalade. Those records were for the time period of January 1st, 2020 to April 28th, 2021, so just a few days after Dee disappeared. He said 4 devices had accessed the app, an iPad Pro, iPhone 6, another iPad Pro, and an iPhone Pro 12 Pro Max with one username. OnStar records the number of times someone tries to locate a vehicle. It was 82 pages with more than 2,100 commands. There were 3 types of commands, mostly get vehicle location, vehicle data, like your tire pressure, your oil light, your fuel, and to unlock doors over that period of 16 months. March 4th records to March 22nd records, there's a device switch. He says the March 4th requests were by one device. There were no requests between March 15th to the 21st. On March 22nd, it switched to another device, the iPhone 12 Pro Max, and that was through April 28th, 2021. And then the unlocked car was used only twice in the 16 months, once on March 25th, 2021, and again on April 25th, 2021 at 7:08 a.m. by the iPhone 12 Pro Max. Here's a quick look at the app and what it looks like. Here's one of the images that was shared at this time. On cross-examination, he was asked, can you lock your keys in the car using the app? He said yes. She says, can OnStar tell you who exactly is pushing the button or why? He says no. And then on redirect, do the records reflect anything different if you access the map? We see that as a get vehicle location request. He says the iPhone 6 does not show up anymore after the iPhone Pro Max 12. All vehicle commands were then done by the 12 Pro Max. So we have not, just so you know, we've not yet heard who had what phone in that household. The 13th witness, the third today, was Madison Wolf. She had worked for Dee as a personal assistant and a nanny around 2015 when she was about 16 years old. They met at 4-H. She did different tasks. She said that Dee became like a mom to her. Her parents were going through a divorce. She went on a family vacation. Dee was very loving, kind-hearted, and strong. She never saw Dee use the My Cadillac app. She would go shopping with Dee and they would take the packages up to the attic and then to another room or leave them in the car so that Dale would not see the purchases. She says the marriage in the beginning was, of her time there, was okay, but over time she could tell that it was business oriented. They were always arguing about money. She was asked, did you observe Dale trying to touch Dee? She said, yes, you can tell she was grossed out by it. There was an objection to that, called for speculation. She said she would pull away, and lots of talk of divorce within the last 3 years. She said Dee would have a stern voice. Dale would listen and then get upset. He had a nickname for her, Fluffy, because she was severely overweight. Most of the time, Dee would sleep on the couch and Dale in the bedroom. She talked about a time where Dee showed her a bump on her head, but she couldn't recall when that was in relation to when Dee disappeared. She said that Dee did tell her she was having an affair with someone for about a year until January 2020. She stored this man's name as Michael in her phone, but that was not his real name. She was brought into the whole conversation with Dee's trouble with the trucking employees on Saturday, and she was asked to look at body cam of Detective Greco walking around the house with Dale, and she said she noticed some burns. This is the picture that she's referencing, and you can see here it looks like there's his hand and wrist are colored differently than his forearm. On cross-examination, it came out that she said that Dee drank nearly every day, and there were times that she would have to go pick up their daughter because Dee had been drinking. She said that Dee would go through Dale's things, and then they talked about the bruise on the forehead, and then she was asked, well, you didn't mention that when you talked to Detective Greco 2 weeks after the disappearance, and she said, I don't remember the interview. The jury had a few questions. They wanted to know if Dee wore her wedding ring after fights. She said she wasn't aware. We already talked about the burns. They asked if she ever knew about Dee sleepwalking. She said no. And then there were two questions that were read into the record after the jury left. One person asked, how was the tracker paid for? Brian Bush said he paid for it. Stephanie said she paid for it. This was the discrepancy. They said this is not an appropriate question under Michigan court rules. And they said, did you form an opinion as to what happened to Dee? Again, that is not an appropriate question. The defense then gets up and wants to put something on the record. She said that the people ran afoul with the questioning of Ms. Wolf and Ms. Vogel, and please be careful of what is said for future witnesses and cannot and can be stated on the record.